So we'll start off with DDMC 12998, which is the option to auto start DDM with Windows. So if I launch DDM on the login screen, we now have the option to launch DDM with Windows. And then on DDM 12640, we've also added the options to remember password and auto sign in. So it just speeds up your process when you start your day. DDM can start with your computer. Another small change we've made is the ability to view a password by holding down the eye icon, and that's available on all the login screens. So I'll just log in, and that's the visibility is DDMC 12990. And now we'll look at DDMC 13029, which is changes to the search and save search layout. So the first change we've made is the search options that were previously at the bottom of the favorites panel have all been moved into the search pane. In this drop down here, the same options are still available, so I can still search everything. I can still search all items, and those items individually, project folders and actions. We've also moved the search mode across and the display options, so we brought all the search tools closer together just to make that a simpler process. With that, we've also added a search history as well as a backwards and forwards button. And on the search history, if we go into Tools, Options, and then Searches, we can configure how much of a history is kept. So if you're jumping back and forth between searches regularly, it just makes that a bit easier. On DDMC 13142, we've made changes to the category browser. So you'll also notice that the preview panel and properties panel used to intersect. That no longer intersects, and with that, what we've done is we've improved the visibility on the favorites panel. And you'll notice that when I logged in, my category tree was left as I had it previously. So if you're working on a project over a number of days or weeks and you're using the same categories repeatedly, when you log in, those categories are ready for you straight away. And we've also added a search function that you've probably seen in the category browser when you're saving a part in the single save. It just makes finding your category that bit easier. So that is the performance section, but there's a few more bits I can cover on searching. Do we have any questions at the moment?
Am I allowed to interject, Matt?
Yeah.
Can I just quickly request control? And I just wanted to highlight a couple of points with what you've been showing. Screen real estate is always a requirement. You have the ability to minimize this top panel. So the left-hand vertical panel can be left minimized. Okay. If you, rather than opening it using the arrows, if you just click on the bar, it temporarily expands it while you make your choice. So if I say recent items, it runs the search and it re-minimizes. Seems to take a long time, Matt. Okay, so it runs it and minimizes, giving you more screen real estate to look at the information that you've searched on. Okay. The thing to note here is if you click on this left-hand panel, your cursor is always immediately in the filter box. So as soon as you click on the panel, you could, for example, as Matt showed, type in bearing, and then it will filter, and you could go in and say, show me my standard bearings. And again, when you select it, it minimizes. If I then go back again, and I want to search on the word nut, again, it filters down. So it's very intuitive. Once you get used to clicking on this and just start typing, it's a really nice, quick way of working. Okay, and as Matt said, it remembers the settings when you exit DDM and log back in again. And then just to reiterate the point, your saved searches, you can just hop backwards and forwards on the searches that you've previously run. The more you get used to using this, the more you'll appreciate just how useful it is. Okay, thanks, Matt.
And we'll move on to searching with DDMC 13256. So the embedded properties that we've got at the bottom of the screen, we've actually added those to a number of places. So we'll have a look at the release manager. So if I look at changing the state of this assembly, we can see at the bottom of the screen we've got that same embedded properties. We've also got the same options that we've got available in the standard Office client. So I can turn off the preview, I can set it to the vertical view, or we can close it entirely. And obviously if I select through the items, I can see the relevant information. As I say, we've added that to a number of places, so if we just have a look at some bearings, and I look at up issuing this assembly, again we've got those same options available. So this is just putting more information in a single screen, so you don't have to jump back and forth between windows as you're working. It's also available in the Replace With Manager for Solid Edge. So if we look at a Solid Edge part, the Replace With, again we've got our preview and we've got our properties. This is also available in the Creo and Inventor load screen. So if I jump over to Creo quickly and use search and open, if we load this Creo item, again we can see we've got our preview, and the same as before, we can modify the position and the sizes as we go. On DDMC 13260, we've also added it to the Replace In. So again, the same is true. So more information available to you as you work. And this is also available on folder properties. So particularly useful here if you've got a folder with a lot of items in there. Just by clicking on the item, we can see the information quickly. So that's some of the search changes we've made. Okay. I will move on now to the Bill of Materials Manager. So we'll start with DDMC 12309. If I just jump back to, I'll go to my workbench and we'll look at this assembly in the Bill of Materials editor. So we've added the same properties and preview view here. And one of the recent changes we made was the latest issue view. So by selecting this, I can quickly see what the latest issue parts would look like. Obviously with the preview, that's quite useful. But this is a quite powerful tool, so you don't necessarily want everybody to have access to that latest issue. So if I go into the admin tool under System, Config, Bill of Materials, I've got the option to restrict the use of that latest issue to certain groups. So in my database I've set it to engineering, but if you wish to have it set to all employees, you can leave that open as well. That's only a small section on Bill of Materials, so I'll probably move on to the workflow unless anybody's got some questions on that straight away.
Matt, can I just interject again? The ability to see latest issue, obviously it's very useful. On a previous workshop when we introduced that functionality, there was a couple of customers who had a concern about it being available by default, and that's why we've given you the option to say it's restricted to only these people. That's why we added that additional admin option in there. Okay, thanks, Matt.
Okay. We'll move on to the folder workflow change, which is DDMC 13442. So if I just head to folders and workflows, and this is a new step option to prevent automatic email notification to group members. So if I look at editing this workflow and this step of the workflow, so at this step, when this arrives, it's to be assigned to all employees in this case, and notify via email all of those members. Now obviously that's an extreme example, but all of those users will get emails. So if you've got a very busy process, you'll get a lot of emails coming through from that. So what we've added an option to do is a new nobody option, which means you can cut out all of those emails if they're not required. So it just tidies up that process a little bit. So
Matt, can I just add to that, Matt?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's particularly useful if you have the definition of a workflow step and you do not require for the user to specify a single individual moving forward, then effectively it would be owned by the entire group, and previously the entire group would get an email, and then people start to ignore emails because they're being spammed. So what we've said is, if you're sending it to an individual using this option, then only the individual gets an email. But if you're not, you can always put here nobody, because otherwise it would have emailed the entire group. So this nobody really works well in conjunction with whether you're using the required selection for an individual or not. Okay. I think that will help most customers. It's worth looking back over your workflows to see if there's anywhere where you're not specifying an individual. Set nobody, otherwise everybody's being emailed every time, or certainly whoever the group ownership is. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, that was only a small section, so I'll just move on to the CAD parameter mapping changes under DDMC 9471. So I'll just come out of the workflow editor. So previously you'd find the CAD parameter mapping under the tools ribbon at the top of DDM, but we've now moved that. Let me just tidy this up into CAD and neutral files and CAD parameter mapping, and this should look very different straight away. So we'll talk through what the changes are. So what we've done is we've tried to give you much more visibility over your parameter mapping. So at the top of the screen we can see all of the rules we've got set for our mapping. We can see a description for each of the mappings, and you can customize your own description so it means something to you. It means it's easy to find. We can see which CAD environments these rules apply to. And we've now updated CAD parameter mapping to allow you to apply the same rules to multiple CAD environments. So if you're a multi-CAD organization and you use the same rules across all of your drawings, you can change them in a single rule rather than in the previous tool where you'd have to go into each CAD environment on its own. We've also added the ability to set the rules for business units. So we can see in this section of the table what business units they apply to, but we'll have a look at that in the editor in a moment. We can see the priority order. So what that means is that's the order that we check the rules with DDM. So we start at the lowest value and we'll work our way up. So we'll start at priority 100. We'll check if it matches the CAD environment. Then we will also check if the rule is enabled. So what that also means with this enabled option, you can, whilst you're working on a rule, you could perhaps disable the rule so you don't lose the work. Also, if you're using rules temporarily, so you've got a single project that requires a one-off situation, you can turn that rule on and off as and when you need it. We can also see when the rule was created and who created it. So all of these are set by the schema upgrade, and what that means is where I've upgraded from a previous version, it's converted the old CAD parameter mappings into this new tool. At the bottom of the screen, in fact, we'll select a different environment just for a better example. At the bottom of the screen, we can see the specifics for these CAD parameter mappings. So under this tab, I can see what attributes are mapped to the part. I can see what change note information is mapped to the part. Likewise for drawing attributes and drawing change notes. And then I can see the specifics for the business units. One thing I will mention, just jumping slightly ahead, all of these columns can now be sorted. So again, just helping you find the information you need quickly. And we've also applied that across all tables in the DDM administration tool. But back to the CAD parameter mapping itself. Now within these rules, if I right click, I can create, edit and delete them. I can also double click on one of the attributes and that will take me into the editor. So as I said before, we can actually add a description now that means something to us as a user. We can specify single or multiple CAD environments. We can set the priority. The change note quantity, so that's how many previous revisions worth of information is being pulled in. So at the moment I've got both of these set to 3. And what I would say is if you're up issuing your parts and your drawings together, I would set your parts to 0, but if you're up issuing your parts and your drawings separately, you can configure these as you require. As I said before, we've got the enabled option and we've carried over the populate blank values. We move on to the business units. So at the moment I've got selected all business units, but if I go to selected business units, I can select single business units, multiple business units. So you can configure this exactly as you need to. And the examples I've got here are regulation requirements. So if you're working on projects or regulations that have specific requirements for drawing information, you can make sure that the items in that business unit get the correct CAD parameter mapping. So this is where we will edit our CAD parameter mapping for the parts. So this table shows us all the attributes that are currently mapped to a part. We've got our options to add, edit and delete at the top, and those options are also available under the right click, and on an item we get the options to edit and delete. If I select add, we get this table. Each of the green items are attributes that are already mapped, so it's quickly visible what ones are already mapped. And again, all of these columns are sortable, so I can sort by system attribute, for example, or description. Or what's particularly helpful is the search option. So I can search for an attribute and quickly find the one I'm looking for. We get our CAD parameter mapping name, which again you can configure depending on what you need it to be in your CAD environment, or if you're setting it to be mapped from the CAD environment back to DDM. And we can set it to be controlled by DDM, CAD environment, or bidirectional. I would generally recommend using DDM as the master application because that allows you to control all the formatting. So what that means, when I go to format mode, I can set exactly what formatting I want applied when it's pulled into the CAD environment. So if on all your drawings you want everything in uppercase, proper case, sentence case, so on, DDM will control that. Max data length. So a good example of this is if you've got an attribute that's perhaps 250 characters long, but your drawing allows for perhaps 20 characters, we can specify that and DDM will just give you the first 20 characters when it loads it into your CAD environment. And then we have the do not set for family members. So what this means is if you're working with family tables or configurations in SolidWorks, as a couple of examples, you may not want every single attribute pulled from DDM to every single configuration. So we can turn off certain attributes so they're not applied to all items. So that's adding a CAD parameter mapping to a part. We then have the change notes, so it's the same process. I've got the same options. If we look at adding here though, what we see is we only get the change note specific attributes, but the rules are the same. So the highlighted ones are the ones that are currently mapped, so we can add more if we wish. We get the same formatting modes, max data length, and so on. And the same is true for the drawing CAD parameter mapping and the drawing change notes. Just cancel that change at the moment. So that's the big changes to CAD parameter mapping on DDMC 9471 and 7603. So as I showed before, we can sort by the ticked columns or any of the columns now, and that's applied across DDM on DDMC 13133. One part I did miss for DDMC 7160. So if I go back into that editor, we'll have a look at a CAD parameter, and we'll just edit the manufacturer again. So DDMC 7160 is when the CAD parameter mapping is set to CAD or both as the master application, and a custom attribute is defined as a lookup. So in DDM, it was a lookup attribute. If the CAD environment doesn't match DDM, that value in the CAD environment will be removed, so you don't end up creating unnecessary entries in DDM for those lookups. So that is CAD parameter mapping.
Can I comment, Matt?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it's quite a significant change to the CAD parameter mapping. We've made it infinitely more configurable, which of course adds a level of complexity. But once you get familiar with this, it's actually a lot easier because you're looking at the specifics that you want and not a massive, great big list of everything that you don't necessarily understand. So it's worth spending a bit of time with this. If you're a customer that uses a single CAD application, then there are lots of the mappings that will be carried across during the upgrade that you could then go in and remove because they don't apply to your business. I think that the addition of being able to have CAD parameter mapping for specific business units takes it to another level. We could never do this in the past. So in terms of generic, configurable and scalable, it's a really significant enhancement to the product. And we've obviously taken it away from the tools tab at the top and put it under CAD and neutral files. So as we're developing the product, we're moving things into a more logical structure so that customers can find them and use them. Another comment on this is people quite often map a lot of parameters. The more you map, the more it has to do during the load and the save processes. I'm definitely an advocate of keep it to a bare minimum that you actually need visible in the CAD files, because DDM becomes the master area where you're looking for that related information. So really think about how many parameters you want mapping and why.
So I'll just move on to a couple of quick ones, quick updates. So on DDMC 13239, we've added legacy support for SolidWorks 2019. On 13326, we've added Creo 12 support. On 13146, we've added Inventor 2026 support. And on 13153, we've added AutoCAD 2026 support. I'll just move on to AnyDocs now. So I'll come up there. And I'm going to load this project into AnyDocs. So DDMC 13118. So on loading new items, would like the default set to not monitoring. So I've just loaded this project in, and we can see that it's not currently monitoring, and nor is the project above. And the reason for that, if I select this one and resume monitoring, as soon as I hit resume monitoring, this is asking me to overwrite. Oh, if we go back to AnyDocs, and if we open up the PowerPoint, again, I'm prompted to overwrite, and all I've done is just selected these items. I've not made any changes to it yet. So obviously these prompts can get in the way and slow you down when you're working in AnyDocs a lot. So by default, they're no longer watched. So I'll just turn that one back off. If I go into this other project and open up this PowerPoint and I make a change to it, I'm not prompted to save at all. If I save the change that I've made and close, although we haven't got it set to monitor, AnyDocs still recognizes that the files have been changed, so it's still highlighted that a save's required. So we've just essentially removed some of those prompts, but we've kept the functionality. On DDM 13138, we've made some changes to the ribbon tools. So now I can select multiple items, so I can resume and get the prompts back, or I can stop those prompts with multi-select, or I could remove them, which I don't want to do. So it just makes it, if you're working in AnyDocs a lot and you're working on multiple projects, you can control all of those a lot quicker than going back and forth between selection and ribbon options. Now on DDM 13159, if you're working predominantly in AnyDocs, you're not necessarily launching DDM every day when you start. So if I quickly log out of DDM, so we've added the functionality where if DDM is needed, why is that not exited? Let's try that again. If DDM is needed, so for example, if I save this project, it now launches DDM to log in. Now, because I selected log out and exit, it's not remembered my start login and automatic sign in. But now, if you set those, it will automatically pick up DDM and continue the save process. Allow me to overwrite. On DDMC 13104, sorry, 13136, jumped ahead. We've also added the ability to externalize parts and drawings. So I've got the standard PDFs that I've already externalized, but I've also got the option to select some drawings and parts that I can save into DDM. Now when you externalize these will still be treated as documents. I should have just selected the one. We'll cancel that for now. So I've got the externalized part there now in DDM, so it just allows you to make more information available to other users that aren't using AnyDocs. Then we've got, back to AnyDocs again, DDMC 13205, when creating a new issue of a subdocument, we unlink the old issue. So again, if I save this project, I'll uncheck these parts and I will check one of these PDFs to save. Now I can select the option to up issue, which will take us back into the standard up issue process. I haven't got access control for that one. But essentially it will unlink it, so you always have the most recent information attached to your project, much like the bill of materials. And that is all of the changes to AnyDocs. Anything to add on that one, Joe, or any questions?
We've simplified AnyDocs. Previously, if you'd already logged into DDM and you start AnyDocs, it would ask you for your password again. And that's just irritating. I'm already logged in. So we've removed a lot of these sort of irritating layers that you were confronted with in the past. So we've simplified it. The up issue that you were showing there, Matt, it was preventing you because the file that you had was still work in progress.
Yeah.
And it won't let you up issue it. But essentially, it means that if you're saving new issues of the externalized files, it will make sure that they are linked to the correct project parents.
Okay, no more questions by the looks of it, so we will move on to the web client, which I've got here. So DDMC 13248 and also 12993, we've added the ability to display pie charts and bar charts as widgets. So I've got a few examples here. So this is obviously particularly useful for monitoring KPIs, monitoring your processes in a quick and easy view. Now these are set in the admin tool under System, Web Widgets, and we'll have a look at editing this widget here. So in the widget type I can select the standard display widget that we've used before. We've got our bar chart standard, our bar chart side by side, and our pie chart options. I'm just going to continue through this one so I don't break anything as I go. The widget properties, so here we'll just apply what's the label for the widget and the description. Is this widget actually active? So again, if you're making modifications, you can turn these widgets on and off as you need to. We can set a refresh timer, so that's an automatic refresh. So if you've got this on your home page, on your dashboard, sorry, and you've got the web client open all day, it will update every 5 minutes in this case, and we can change that in increments of 5 minutes. We've got our height and column numbers, so we can specify the space that takes up. Then we've got the query itself. So it's an SQL based query. In the help section we do provide some samples, but you obviously do need an understanding of SQL, but I believe we do offer support with creating these queries. And once you've created a query, we can use the test query and preview. So this shows me the data that it's collected in the query and then how we will be presented as a widget. And then at the end here we can specify who actually has access to these widgets. So obviously if you're using these for KPIs or process monitoring, you don't necessarily want them available to everyone. You want them available to the process leads, for example, or management team. So you can specify that here. DDMC 13200, when administrator modifies a system widget, the change should reflect on all users' widgets. So if I make a change to one of those widgets, if we go back into the edit, we'll edit a bar chart. This time, if I make a change to one of these widgets, and I set this to 50, so this is reduce the number of results I've got. That's the reason I've made this change. But by making this change, and if I confirm it, when the widget next updates, that change will be pushed through to all users' dashboards. So if you're working on these widgets and you're using this as a home screen to monitor your processes, even the changes will be updated. I'll confirm it, but unless we're lucky, we probably won't see that update happen straight away until 5 minutes has passed. So we'll move on to DDMC 13108, allowing restricted web users to download related native files. Now, so I'm just going to log out of this account and I'm going to log in as a sample web user. Now this is a restricted account, so if I were to perform an empty search, you can see I've only got limited access to items, so I've only got access to this one bearing housing assembly, and the reason this user has access to that assembly is because it's part of this web user folder that they've got access to. So if we have a look at this assembly, because this is a restricted account, if I look at the bill of materials, family table, where user, I have a very limited access, but this user does have access to the native files. So this might be a supplier where they want to access your native files to build components. If I select to download this native file, we open that up. So although I've got restricted access, because I've turned on the option to allow restricted users, I've actually got all of the components that build the assembly and the related neutral files as well, so it gives them full visibility if they're working in this way. And that option is found under System, Web Client, General Settings, and we have a checkbox here to allow restricted users to access that. Then we've got DDMC 13219. When dashboard on home page is loading, some menu items don't work until the load is finished. If we jump back to dashboard, so you may have run into an issue before where as you're loading the web page, you know exactly where you want to go. You don't want to wait for widgets to load and things like that. But some of the controls will be non-responsive until those items are fully loaded. So we've made some changes to that process so that the controls are still interactive. And we've got DDMC 5724, adding a flag in DDM admin tool for forcing the use of SSL. So for additional security, we've also added the option to force the use of SSL on the web client, and they can be specified separately for internal and external pages. And that's under System, Security, and General. So here are my options, so I can force the use of the SSL or HTTPS for both public and internal pages, just to improve security. And that is all of the updates for this presentation. So we've made significant improvements to the user interface. We've overhauled the CAD parameter mapping tool. We've made improvements to any docs and some useful changes to the web client. Are there any other questions or comments, Joe?
I can't see any questions. I just wanted to add on the web client widgets. If we could just hop back, Matt.
Yes, of course.
You know, this is part of a journey when we're looking at the web client. The standard dashboard that you're seeing here, for anybody who attended previous workshops, we can now customize the dashboard either by group or really down to an individual user. So if you've got someone who accesses the web client and wants a very simple interface, all of that can be achieved. We then took it a step further to say, well, we can add these custom widgets so you can start to display information on the screen as well. Information that comes from the current DDM database, but these SQL queries that Matt mentioned can actually be data coming from other third-party databases as well. So most people have CRM systems or ERP systems, etc. You can actually pull information from those to show them in a common dashboard in the web client. And obviously, because it's web-based, if your setup has been configured to see the outside world, as I've got on my mobile phone or cell phone, I can access my dashboard and all of those statistics anywhere I am. So it really starts to become very useful. This current version, we've introduced the ability. Matt, can you go back to a dashboard that shows us the different types?
Yeah, I'll just change the user quickly.
Yeah. So what we're showing the pie chart and the bar chart options in here. There is another option that we would have covered on previous workshops where you can have a single widget with a number in that tells you a value based on a query. So it's really starting to continually extend the capabilities of these configurable dashboards. It's a bit of a journey, and people keep giving us feedback, and we think, that would be a good enhancement. I think it's a great one because we're using it internally as a business now as well. So anybody who's got a specific interest in this area, do get in touch.